Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. My name is Wendy, and I am a speech-language pathologist, a brain injury specialist, and a certified brain health coach. I'm glad that you chose to join me here to talk about or listen to how to support your brain health for everybody that you are connected with. For yourself, you can improve your brain. For maybe people that you work with or people that you love, people in your family. I work for BrainLinks, and BrainLinks is a grant-funded program. We're supported at the federal level by the ACL and at the state level by the Tennessee Traumatic Brain Injury Program, and we're part of the Tennessee Disability Coalition. It's our job to educate people who work with people with traumatic brain injuries and give them all of the information and the tools that they need in order to be able to serve them in the best way possible. And we're a statewide team, and everything that we do is free. You can check out more information on our YouTube training channel. You can also go to our website, which is tndisability.org/brain for a lot more resources. So what I'm going to talk about here is things that can damage our brain or things that change our brain over time or things that we do to our brain, and then things that we can be doing every day to change our brains. So just a disclaimer, I am not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm a speech pathologist like I said, but I am a certified brain health coach. And if you have more information, more questions about your health specifically, then you should probably speak with your doctor. And there is good information at the Center for Disease Control, the CDC. They have good brain health information. And also there's a great book called Memory Rescue by Dr. Daniel Amen. Now that book, it's not just about, it's really like how do you save your memory over time. It's really about how do you preserve your brain and how do you make your brain the healthiest that it can be. So it's more than just memory there. So I want you to think about, what do you want your brain to look like? Do you want it to be strong and healthy with lots of good connections? Do you want it to be creative and a good problem solver with lots of good ideas? And how do you want the brains of the people that you are in your life to be? How do you want your brain to be fueled? Do you want it to be fueled on processed food and junk food? Or do you want it to be fueled on brain healthy food? Here is lots of things that are good for the brain that actually look like brains. Now, everything that's good for the brain doesn't look like the brain, but I thought that that was really interesting that a lot of them actually do. Think also about, how do you want your brain to what's its default mood? Do you want it to be angry, depressed, anxious, agitated, or do you want it to be kind of calm and happy as your default mode? So let's get into some things that impact our brains. Inflammation is terrible for our brain. So this is swelling. Acute inflammation, or inflammation that comes about because of an injury that is just there for that injury, is healthy. It comes in and it cleans out anything that shouldn't be there, and it's part of the healing process. For the brain, chronic inflammation is very, very bad. I mean, acute inflammation can be deadly, but chronic inflammation is very, very bad. It's very bad for the whole entire body. We definitely don't want it in our brains. And unfortunately, everything that you see pictured there that's high in sugar, sugar is really bad for our brains. So are some other things, but that is a big inflammatory cause in our body. A sitting type of lifestyle is also not good for our brains. Genetics. So this is kind of like, genetics often gets a lot of the blame for things. Well, I'm going to be that way because my parents were that way, or a sister or something like that. But there's this thing called epigenetics, which says that we can have genes that are turned on or turned off. So let's say you have someone in your family that has the gene for Alzheimer's turned on. That doesn't mean that you have to get it. Epigenetics says that we can change. If it's off, we can turn it on if it's a good gene, and if it's bad, we can turn it off. The way we do this is the things that we're going to talk about today. So we're not stuck with the genes that we have, not entirely. So we do have more control. And that kind of leads me to this thought that if you hear anything today that sounds like, oh no, I'm worried, that's bad, then keep listening, because I always tell you something positive about it, because there is, related to this, there are positive things. So with genetics, like I said, we can be born with certain genes turned on, but we can turn them off. And if we haven't had children yet, we've turned them off for our children as well, and it's up to them to then keep them off if they're bad. Toxins, we're going to talk about, bad for the brain. We've got to keep our mental health positive. We've got to control that, because the way I think of it is that neurons in our brain that fire together wire together. So if you tend to always be negative, you're kind of making it more easy for you to be negative in the future. You've got to work to change that. And I've watched people change that, and so that their default is much more positive, because now you've got other neurons firing together. So mental health, really important. Infections too are bad for the brain, and this means things like HIV, Lyme, the Hep viruses, things like that can be bad for the brain. Neurohormone deficiencies, we have to have our hormones balanced. Obesity, so I'm sorry to tell you that, because our country is getting so much bigger as individuals, that obesity, the bigger our bodies are, and I don't mean tall, I mean wide here, the bigger we are, the smaller our brains are. And this has been actually proven in a couple of different studies. Most likely because a lot of the things that make us obese are on this list as bad things, like the inflammation, the diabetes that you see. Can throw off our hormones, a variety of different things. So diabetes, we need to keep our blood sugar constant as much as we can, and that goes for even if we don't have diabetes, we want to try to keep our blood sugar constant. Poor sleep will really damage our brains, and a lack of new learning will go into many of these. So you may or may not have heard of ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. There's a lot of research going on about these now, but there was a big study that came out that said that these adverse childhood experiences, this is things like divorce or having been abused in any way as a child, having someone who in your family who in the house who had substance abuse issues, things kind of like that can change the brain of the child if they have enough of them. So it changes the way the child processes memory and emotion and how we deal with stress. So they tend to be on high alert all the time, and our brain learns that, and it stays on high alert. That can impact a lot of functions within the brain, and it produces these brain chemicals that lead to inflammation and weaker connections in the brain. It also changes our telomeres. The telomeres, if you look down at that sneaker, has that plastic part on the end. It's called maglet. That's kind of like a telomere on the end of our DNA. Those can wear down. Things that we do in our life can wear them down. ACEs have been shown to reduce the telomeres. And what that does is it leads to faster cell aging, more disease, and shorter lives. That sounds pretty negative. I told you everything, though, that I say here has a positive to the other side of it. This too can be changed. Even if the telomeres have changed, we can begin to, we can change them back, and we can kind of regrow them or repair them by doing the things that we talk about here today. Other things, obviously, a traumatic brain injury. That's what I have done a lot of my life is work with traumatic brain injury. That can damage the brain, obviously, stroke, tumors, things like that. So dementia, right, that's kind of the long-term thing that lots of us worry about related to brain health. There's a new study that just came out in 2020, the end of 2020, that says that there are more modifiable risks for dementia. So things that are risk factors for dementia that we can change. So before we knew 9 of them, they just added 3 more. So things like, and we've talked about a lot of this, depression, diabetes, less education, physical inactivity, obesity, hypertension or high blood pressure, hearing impairment, low social contact, smoking, and then they added too much alcohol. Alcohol is actually a poison for our brain, a traumatic brain injury. They're saying that's modifiable because we can do a lot for prevention. And then air pollution. All of those things we can try to get rid of. And all 12 of these account for approximately 40% of the dementias worldwide. So controlling for these, we can get rid of a lot of the dementia. And dementia is just exploding in the United States. I wanted to mention one thing here. Less education. You say, oh my gosh, I graduated high school. I decided not to go on. That, again, that doesn't mean that, oh, you're doomed for dementia or anything like that at all. What you need to do is just continue to learn in your life. Or if you say you went to a vocational school and you learned, or you didn't, but you learned a trade or you learned a job. A friend of mine just took a new job and she's in her upper 50s. And she said, every day I'm learning something new. I come home and it's like my brain is full. Well, that's awesome. That is great for your brain. So look for those kinds of things. And it doesn't have to be through work. It can be through all kinds of things. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So these are SPECT scans. The one on the left is a healthy brain, and you'll see how that's smooth. Now, that's not actually the brain. What that's showing you is the blood flow in the brain. And the one on the right is a brain that's on alcohol and drugs. And again, not physical holes, not at this point anyway. They are just showing you where the blood flow is not good there, and that will lead to damage within the brain. All right, sounds pretty bad, right? This is what's happening in the brain. However, we can change our brain, and these SPECT scans are an amazing way to be able to be showing that. So what we're seeing, this brain had multiple concussions. I believe it's someone in the NFL. They have damage to the anterior temporal poles where that top arrow is. And it's asymmetrical. So that second arrow that came up is actually worse than the other side. And this person has a very bad temper in addition to other things. But he changed his brain. So just doing some of the things that we're going to talk about today, he may have engaged some supplements. I'm not sure exactly, but it basically is from this type of thing. He changed his brain, and it's much smoother there at the end. So as we go, I want you to maybe grab a piece of paper and jot down some things that you might change for yourself or for your family. And there's some green tea, which is good. Just watch the caffeine, and some dark chocolate, which is good for the brain. So one of the first things we can do is be resilient. Change is inevitable, and we've got it, and negative change is inevitable, and we're going to have to bounce back from that. You say, well, I'm not good at that. Well, if we do bounce back, we can have improved relationships. We can have new possibility for our lives, greater appreciation for our lives, a greater sense of personal strength and spiritual development, among other things. And everything that I talk about here is evidence-based. That means that there has been studies that show what I'm talking about. On the right, you see a picture of the Tennessee Disability Coalition. This was on March 3rd of 2020. Right, we had a terrible tornado come through and really basically destroyed our building. It's a year later, and we're still not back in it yet. It's still being repaired. But our director, the first thing that she said was, you know, she was shaken when she got on the phone with all of us, but she said, "We're gonna be okay. We're gonna build back from this. We're gonna be okay." And she just set that tone of resiliency. There are ways to cultivate resilience. So if you're not resilient right now, you can make a commitment to find meaning. I'm going to find meaning in this. That doesn't mean that you can find it day one. Sometimes when I look back at things that have happened in my life, I almost find different types of meanings that came from it as my life goes on, and it continued to grow in impact in positive ways. We need to have a belief in our capacity to create a positive outcome. I can do this. A willingness to grow, and the choice to laugh and be grateful. And it doesn't always feel like a choice. I get it. I understand. I've been there, but we've got to try to do it. We don't have to be laughing about the thing that happened or grateful about the thing that happened, but we need to bring gratitude in. We'll talk more about it, but it changes the chemicals that are in our brain. So for instance, let's say you're sitting, and I work in traumatic brain injury, and you're sitting in the hospital. You can take a break and just look out the window because someone's been injured in your family. You can take a break and just go look out the window, and maybe you see that it's a sunny day, and that brings you gratitude. For me, I like rainy days, I like sunny days, I like them all. So I just look out the window and I'm happy. Find something that you can just change it, even if it's for a moment, to bring gratitude in. So an approach to resilience is, there are two questions you can ask yourself. What could possibly be right about this? And again, won't necessarily come up in that moment. You might have to wait for some time to figure out what's right about it, but be willing to ask that question. And what in your life or yourself can you be grateful for right now? And that's kind of that idea of looking at the window, out the window. And that's a good book to read, How to Survive Change You Didn't Ask For. I have a picture here of, that's my daughter on the left and my mother-in-law in the middle, and that's me. And you might be able to tell from the background that we are in an emergency room, and my dog has just knocked over my mother-in-law and she broke her wrist. So I ran over to her. We were outside in the dog run, and I ran over to her and I said, "Oh my gosh, are you all right?" And she said, "I'm fine." I said, "Oh, thank goodness." And she said, "Oh no, I broke my wrist, but thank God it wasn't my hip." So her first reaction is, "I'm fine." And that's the tone that she presented it to me in. And she found something immediately to be grateful for, and she didn't have to look. Who she is someone who is grateful. She just naturally is. If we're not that way, we can get there by always focusing on what is positive there. So being grateful is so important. There was a gratitude study that had 3 groups where people journaled. One group journaled things that annoyed or bother them. A lot of us do that, and there's value in venting, getting it out. Some journaled what happened to them, and some journaled what they were grateful for. And what they found was the group that journaled, what they were grateful for, had greater levels of well-being and optimism. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? You're focused on happy, on grateful, you're going to be that. Well, that makes sense. It was nice to find, but that makes sense. But also, they exercised more, they slept better, they woke up more refreshed, they lowered their blood pressure, had less inflammation, better immune function, more likely to help someone else with a problem, and lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So these weren't even things that were related to anything they asked them to do, except to journal what they were grateful for each day. So if you can make one change, consider writing down 2 things each day that you're grateful for. Some people wake up with that, and that kind of sets the tone for the day, but you can also, I like to journal at the end of the day that kind of looks back on that day and what I was grateful for in that day, regardless of what happened. Related to gratitude is happy, and the way that the younger folks look at happiness than older folks is different. And the older folks tend to look at things as, well, let me start with the younger. So the younger will be, I'll be happy if only that she goes to the prom with me, if only I get my car, if only, and they're waiting for something in the future to be happy about. So what older people tend to do is happy in spite of. So they have lived a life and they've had things happen. They know things happen. They know you bounce back from them. And this is not everybody. And they also know that they're probably starting to face some changes. Maybe their knees hurt, and they're going to be happy anyway. They're going to be happy in spite of the fact that their knees hurt. My uncle is one of the happiest people I know. His memory is not great. He's got lots of physical problems, and he will just joke with you all the time, and he always sees something happy in the situation. And he sees what's happening that's negative too. He does, but it's a choice of being happy anyway and focusing on what you're grateful about. So with our children, we can help them to build this resilience and to be happy with what is going on right now. We need to preserve mental health. So we need to kill the ants, which is the automatic negative thoughts. That term comes from Dr. Daniel Amen. He does great work in this area. It's that book that I talked about, Memory Rescue. So we need to kill our ants. And he says we have so many stupid thoughts every day, and we shouldn't believe every stupid thought that we have. We need to really question them and think about whether they're true or not. And these 4 questions are from Byron Katie, and she says that we should ask of our stupid thoughts. We should say, so let's say we think, well, everybody hates me. Well, is it true? Maybe. I think, yeah, it is. Well, can I absolutely know it's true with 100% certainty? Well, no, I can't. There's certainly people who haven't met me. I think my mom likes me. So it starts to kill the ant. How do I feel when I believe the thought? I feel terrible. I feel like I don't want to be with people. I feel like I just want to keep to myself. Well, who would I be, or how would I feel if I didn't have that thought? Well, I would be much happier. I would go out in the world. I would be around people. I would feel more comfortable and confident talking. Well, now we've really started to kill the ants because we see a reason to be changing and thinking about it in a different way. For children, Dr. Daniel Amen wrote a good book called Kill the Ants. And there's also a YouTube video, which you can see here, where he reads the book. And it teaches children how to kill the ants. We need to also be stress-free. Some of you might be laughing and saying, well, that's just crazy. We can't be. Stress is a part of life. Challenges are a part of life, yes. The way we react to them, though, it doesn't have to be, or at least doesn't have to be as big a part. So I love this by Mark Twain. I've been through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened, right? Because stress is usually about some future thing. What are we worried about that's going to happen in the future? So if we can not worry about the future, then we can really be less stressful. And let me give you a way to do that. I love this. If this can be life-changing, if you can really understand what the Dalai Lama is saying and make this change. So he says that if you have a fear of something, pain, suffering, something bad, you should examine whether there's anything you can do about it. If you can, don't worry about it. Then go do that thing. Go make the plan. Go write your list. Go do it. Whatever it is, do the thing that you can do so you don't have to worry about it. If there's nothing that you can do about it, then you also don't need to worry, right? Nothing you can do. Let's wait and see if it happens or not. You can have a plan in place for if it does happen, but otherwise there's nothing I can do about it. And my stress, my worry is going to decrease my immune system. It's going to make it harder for me to think if I'm all worried. So it makes us less able to handle that thing that may or may not come. Really key right there, that slide. So other things we can do for our mental health and stress are to relax. We can take some ways to do that. Let's see if we can get into the pufferfish. So with the pufferfish, you breathe in and you breathe out. And so he slows you down, gives you a good way to take deep breaths in. This is on the website at headachereliefguide.com. He'll keep on going. So you go to that website, and this is great for adults and children. There are other photos there that you can use, or animations that you can use. I love this one the best. He just makes me smile. I have used him a lot. I would keep him open on a tab on my computer and just kind of run across them during the day. I'd pop them on and just take a couple of deep breaths and then go back about my work. It got to the point where I really trained myself that this is what I do with him, that I would just see the tab on my computer and I would relax. And now somebody just has to say the word pufferfish to me and I'll smile. So, and that brings good stuff into my brain and into my body, good neurochemicals. So great thing to use with children, but not exclusively for children. And if you do have migraines or headaches, that's a great place to go, headachereliefguide.com. Meditation changes the brain. It shuts down what some people call the monkey mind, or this default mode network. It quiets it. This is the part of our brain that is constantly going. It's just chattering all the time, and it helps to quiet that. It changes the gray matter volume, which is a positive thing. It increases the hippocampus, which is for memory and new learning, and it decreases the amygdala, which is that stress area. It's great for so many things, including depression, chronic pain, anxiety, attention, addiction, and more. Lots of different ways to meditate. You can just quiet, stilling the mind, sitting there quietly. A lot of people don't like this one. This is my way. This is what the way that I love to meditate. And people think that people who do this are just sitting there and there's nothing coming into their mind. Not true at all. Thoughts are still coming, but you get better and better over time at kind of recognizing the thought. You can label it and say, okay, this is a stress thought, this is a worry thought, this is a thing to do, whatever it is, and then you let it go. And you get better at kind of going, oh, there it is, let it go. And not engaging, not following the thought. So even if it comes, one right after another, especially in the middle, that's okay. And if you say, I can only do this for 5 minutes, that's okay. You will get better. The way that I keep my mind quiet is I focus on what I'm physically feeling. Not necessarily my emotions, but more like how does my bottom feel sitting on the cushion? Is there a breeze on my skin? Where is there stress? And just letting all of that go and just noticing. So my mind is quietly noticing, and that allows a lot of the stress to go away. And over time, I've meditated for many, many years. I saw change happen quickly. It can take a little bit, so don't go, this doesn't work for me. It does, it will. You might just not have seen it yet. Or sometimes there's subtle changes, like I don't get as angry as I used to. I'm not as jumpy. I can kind of sit and focus better. So it's good for all of that. So give it time, and you can over time do it more, but I promise you 5 minutes a day of really trying this will help too. You can do a mantra, which is repeating the same thing over and over and over again. It can be a prayer, it could be a word, it could be a phrase. They're often phrases. I don't like that one. My son loves that one. They can be guided meditations, or you can go on YouTube and you can put in guided meditations, and you'll see all kinds, all time frames. Pick the one, just watch a few, listen to a few. You can do the same one over and over again, so your body and your brain start to understand, okay, this is what I do, kind of like with the puffer fish, and I'm here to meditate now. Or you can pick different ones and do different things. Mindfulness is really being present in the moment and being mindfully aware of what is happening. So mindfulness, there are also YouTube meditations for that. There's for children, you can Google them, they're out there for adults too on YouTube. But there's a butterfly body scan. You can have them do that. There's another one, the tree guided meditation for children in classrooms. But find the ones that your children like. And my children, to fall asleep, they used to like progressive relaxation, and that's another one. And they used to call them relaxtions. Would you do a relaxation with me? And I would go into their room and I would talk them through progressively relaxing their body. And there's lots of ways to do that too. And they loved that, and they would fall asleep. And it's so healthy too to relax like that. We've got to find purpose and joy. So if we have purpose without joy, kind of can start over time to lose its purpose. If we have joy without purpose, it can start to lose its sense of joyfulness, because we kind of geared to have purpose and to want purpose in our lives, at least over the long haul. So initially we might be like, this is just fun, and I'm surfing every day. And that may, if you found a purpose through that, then it might stick long term. But otherwise you might say, well, I want something more, I need something more. And they have found that this is very, very good for your brain. There was an interesting study that looked at purpose in Alzheimer's disease, and it saw that, so we know that people who have purpose have, their brains are better. But this study looked at people who had a sense of purpose versus not. They assessed them, and they followed them over time. And when they passed, they autopsied their brains, and they found that if you had, so they found the signs of Alzheimer's in not all of the brains, but in both groups of the brain, people who had purpose and people who didn't. But what they found is that in the group that had a sense of purpose when they were alive, the plaques and the tangles that show up with Alzheimer's disease did not show themselves in that person's life, meaning they didn't have symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in their life. So what the author thought was that somehow the sense of purpose must help us to build up this cognitive reserve. It's probably strengthening some of the connections. It's probably are maybe less atrophy, things like that potentially. And so it didn't show up. Their brains were just healthier at the point that they wouldn't see this showing up, maybe because of cognitive reserve. We've got to be social. Right now we're still living at the tail end of COVID. Hopefully it's the tail end in March of 2021. But we've come off of a period where it's really been hard to be social, but we've got to be finding ways, and that might be something like this, engaging with people, even though we're not, you're not here with me right now. It's still kind of a human presence here with you. We can have Zoom calls and other video calls. We can get on the phone, but finding ways to be social. We can be around people but far away, and then later, resume our normal ways, which hopefully you're all in that right now. We need to, relationships decrease our risk of dementia. They improve our physical health by helping the immune system. They increase capillary formation and new neuronal growth in the brain. Capillaries throughout our body are the very smallest, small parts of the vessels, kind of like in our fingertips. That's where it branches out into capillaries. We have that in the brain, and we need that. And over time, as we start to have bad habits, those capillaries can start to get clogged up, and that's a really bad thing when it's in the brain. Socialization decreases depression and decreases stress. And we've got to get hearing aids when we need them. I promise my children that I absolutely will, because we have enough people in our lives that don't have hearing aids, and they think they're getting away with something because they don't want the hearing aids, so we see it, but we see that they can't hear. We know that in our interactions, and it's so important. You can't be social, you can't engage in things that are auditory or hearing if you don't have your hearing properly aided. We've got to keep learning, as I mentioned earlier. We have to, the best way is to learn in a new way, or learn, not just, so I like book learning, that's kind of my thing, but it would be good for me to go out and learn dancing, or just dance, I don't even have to learn it per se. I can go out dancing, that's using a different part of my brain. Playing table tennis or ping pong, that is awesome for a different part, for the back part of your brain. So we need to do different things, and we need to do it in a way that challenges ourselves. So my mom is awesome at knitting. She loves it, and she can carry on a conversation with you. She can be watching TV all the while she's knitting, because it has become such an automatic task for her. Although that's good for her, it's not new learning. You see her open up a pattern and everything changes, right? She's got to stop. She's got to be looking at, so her having new patterns is great. But her taking up maybe crocheting, learning something similar but different is also good. We've got to have that to build that cognitive reserve that I talked about earlier, so that we preserve function within our brain. We have to exercise as well, and it has to be cardiovascular exercise, which means exercise that gets the heart rate going and the breathing going. And if you haven't exercised in a long time, you might want to check with your doctor, make sure that it is safe for you to do so. But we've got to get that cardiovascular. And if you say, well, I've got this problem or that problem, find a way to do it, is the best thing I can say. So if there are exercises that are non-cardiovascular that you need to take care of first, go do that. I have a bad knee. It was important for me to really try to rehab my knee before I could really get things cardiovascular going. And then still, running is out of the question right now. Walking is, my knee will hurt over time for whatever reason, but I can ride a bike, I can ride a stationary bike, and I can do an elliptical. And so those are my things of choice, because I can do them and I can get my heart rate up. And initially I had to, because of just to watch my knee, I had to go slowly, and I would do it in short bursts over the course of the day, getting to the point where I could do longer ones. So find something. If you can't use your lower body, there are devices where you can kind of pedal with your arms, and that will raise your heart rate. So be creative and think of ways to be able to do it. Exercise helps lower depression. There's a really important study that showed that at 12 weeks, so where they looked at, and please, if you're on medication for depression, continue it. But know that you can add exercise to that. What happened is they looked at two groups. One was on medication for depression, the other one exercised, and cardiovascular exercise. And by 12 weeks, they were the same. Exercise was as good as antidepressants. By 10 months, the exercise was better, because the exercise is changing the brain in such a way, bringing these positive chemicals to the brain. Plus, it's creating so many changes within your body. So the thing is, when you're depressed, you generally don't want to exercise. You got to do it anyway. Just make it something that you do. Usually by the end, you'll feel better. So do it. And again, don't get off your medications. Don't say, well, I'm going to switch to exercise. No. Start the exercise, then talk to your doctor. When you know that you're maintaining it, and then talk to your doctor. But don't get off and switch to exercise. Exercise helps with focus. It decreases stress, lowers our blood pressure, helps blood sugar levels, helps us to maintain that healthy weight, boosts immunity, and so much more. My daughter she's a nurse, but she's an exercise physiologist as well, and she said exercise is a magic pill. I would say she's absolutely right, as is food, the right food. So exercise also helps with our memory, and this to me is, this next thing that I'm going to say is absolutely incredible. So with age, our hippocampus, which is memory new learning, can shrink. Now, it doesn't have to. We can do all of the things I'm talking about and keep it good, but it can shrink over age. So let's say you say, well, I have violated a lot of these things that you're talking about here. I'm older. I'm starting to have some memory problems. I've shrunken my hippocampus. I'm in trouble. No. Exercise, cardiovascular exercise, actually reversed hippocampal shrinkage. That just, as someone who's been like studying the brain and involved with the brain my whole career, that is just amazing to me and so exciting. Okay, next thing, eat well and start now, regardless of when now is for you. Regardless of what age you are, go ahead and start eating better now. It is that important and that effective in making changes regardless of the age. So we're talking about the brain, so I'll focus on eating to ward off Alzheimer's. So right now, we currently think that Alzheimer's is incurable. Now, Dr. Amen will dispute that. So meaning when you have it, there's nothing that we can do about it. That's kind of so let's go along with the conventional wisdom. It's incurable, but preventable through dietary and lifestyle changes, everything we're talking about here. And again, Alzheimer's, all dementias are exploding because we are just getting so much worse as a country at specifically obesity, but also we're having a hard time with mental health. So we need to be making these changes and make them now. The guidelines for the prevention of Alzheimer's disease in the Journal of Neurobiology of Aging, this is what they said. Vegetables, legumes, which are beans, peas, and lentils, fruits, and whole grains should replace meats and dairy products as primary staples of the diet. So that's basically, so you might call, in days past, we would have called it a vegan diet, no dairy, no meat. What they're leaning, so a lot of vegans are not healthy because they're not doing it in the right way. So it's really shifted to calling it a whole food, plant-based diet, right? Because potato chips, it's a plant, it's vegan, not good for you. So if you're filling up your vegan diet with a lot of those things, then that can be trouble. So we need to think about whole food, plant-based. Try to get rid of as many fats as you can, and trying to get in as many fruits and vegetables, and lesser on the beans, but really concentrate on fruits and vegetables, and you will really see changes in your health. And you can take this in, if you can't do the whole thing at once, then make slow changes, but keep yourself accountable. Maybe plan a timeline for when you're going to reach a certain goal and then get there, because it's that important. Eating to ward off stroke, we need to have more fiber. 7% of us don't have enough fiber because we're not eating enough beans, oats, nuts, berries, and then insoluble fiber is whole grains. So this is millet. A lot of people have wheat issues. If you have chronic pain, inflammation issues, you might want to get off of the wheat with gluten. But brown rice, millet, you can Google what are whole grains and stick with those, and gluten-free whole grains. Potassium, 98% of us don't have enough of this. That's in greens and beans and sweet potatoes. We tend to think of bananas, but actually greens have more, and beans and sweet potatoes also excellent sources. Citrus is great for our brain and to ward off a stroke because it gets those the little capillaries that I talked about flowing. It increases blood flow. It decreases blood pressure. If you have cold fingers, go eat an orange and see if you see change in your fingertips. We need to get more antioxidants, and plant foods have 64 times more antioxidants than animal foods. One fun fact, organic wild Maine blueberries are incredibly, unbelievably good for you. They're high in antioxidants. They're good for the health of your blood vessels, reducing helping with blood vessel regeneration, reducing inflammation, lowering blood pressure, enhancing mood. They're just so good. You can get them in every day in a healthy blueberry muffin. You can get in more in a daily smoothie, and that's a great way to do it. You can also stick some greens in there, and you won't taste it, but play around with what kind of mixtures you like. But you bring in other fruits, but go for the organic, because non-organic blueberries tend to be high in pesticides, and go for the wild Maine ones. And you're more likely to find them frozen. one, because they're from Maine, if you're not near Maine, and then two, because they're smaller. So it's not the ones that we gravitate to, the really big ones. The wild Maine ones are the best. Great resource here, How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. It is all the research on how to not die of the top 15 ways that Americans tend to die. And I believe brain is number 3. And then he then condenses that into this Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen app, which is free. And it summarizes or kind of condenses what you need to eat each day. So, and you check it off. And so it shows you here that you need 3 servings of beans, 1 serving of berries, and then other fruits. Because berries are so good on their own that we need them in addition to the other fruits. Cruciferous is things like kale and radishes and Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, that we should have every day as well, in addition to greens, all by themselves, because not necessarily by themselves, but in addition to greens as a standalone group, because they are so good for us, and then other vegetables as well. So it'll go through all of those and show you what you can have. And he has a great website called nutritionfacts.org. You can basically Google everything. Someone asked me the other day about intermittent fasting, and I said, I don't know the research on that, and I try not to talk about it if I don't know the research. I don't want to just give you my opinion or what I think is. You go there, and I said, go there and Google it. And while we were still on this call, they were like, oh yeah, there's videos, more than one video on that. So there's videos and there's things to read, lots of great information that's evidence-based. And I just want to stay for a minute. So he is a good source to go to because he follows the evidence. Even if you look at some of these organizations who shall remain nameless, that are groups that support different parts of our body, let's say, or like heart health or brain health or things like that, and that's their primary mission. And some medical groups, you'll see that they will have meat and dairy recipes on their, or even like a recommendation that includes meat and dairy. That is not evidence-based. They have what some do is they put what they think people will follow. And I don't want to know that. I want to know what's right and let me make this decision about what I'm able to follow. And then some you'll see have support from the meat and dairy industries. So be very careful if you see that. We have to remove toxins in food. We can take a look at organic. Organic food, people will say it is more expensive. It is cheaper than being sick. And it feels so much better than being sick as well. So consider going organic. You don't have to go organic with everything, though. You can choose this app, which is free as well, the Dirty Dozen. That'll show you which are the top 12 fruits and vegetables for pesticide use, and stay away from those. And this will change over time depending on the year, but so take a look at that. So go organic, grow your own where you can, get rid of alcohol, it's a poison. You can drink filtered water, don't eat processed foods, and watch artificial colors and sweeteners, and go vegetarian, or better yet, go vegan. With the filtered water, I just want to say that be careful the type of filter that you have. If it is the kind that has these metal plates, I forget what it is. It's not, I don't think it's reverse osmosis, but it's the other one. Those plates can break down over time, and you can have minute metal particles that are getting in, so don't choose that. Remove toxins out of your cleaning products and your personal hygiene products, out of the environment. There's another app called Think Dirty that you can put in, you can read the barcode of your item, and it'll tell you whether it's a green light thing, a yellow, or a red. And just some of the red things are only there because of fragrance, though, and if they don't know what fragrances they're using, they'll put it as something negative, as a a bad thing. But so try to research and find out what are the fragrances based on. Sleep is so important, and we are nearing the end, so please stick with me. We're getting close. Sleep is important for each child's age. You can go to WebMD. There is, for each age, what is recommended. For most adults, it's 7 to 8 hours a night. If you have sleep apnea, you may not know this, but your partner might know this. These are times where you kind of don't breathe for a little bit and then usually snort back into this deep breath and come back. You're stopping breathing, and that's really, really bad for the brain. Dr. Amen says, if I even suspect you have sleep apnea, I am sending you for a sleep test because it is that bad. Reduce your stress, manage your stress like we talked about, reduce the use of electronic devices at night, stick to a regular schedule, sleep-wake schedule, reduce caffeine, especially at night, but if you can get rid of it overall, that will be helpful. Chamomile tea is calming, that can be good at night. Kill the ants, those automatic negative thoughts, but fix what keeps you up at night. So what is it that either wakes you up in the middle of the night or stops you from falling asleep, and focus on that. And we've got to have good sleep, because during sleep, you're like, oh, well, I can get away without sleep. No, you can't. You might be in the short term. You can get away with a lot of things in the short term, especially if you're young, but keep in mind, you're not really getting away with any of it. They think that dementia starts decades before it actually shows in our lives. So we've got to start cleaning up our act when we're young. So your brain cleans itself of toxins and plaques during the night, and if it doesn't get cleaned, it causes brain fog, memory issues, and it can lead to dementia. Here's a new document that BrainLinks just put out called focused on brain health. It talks about a lot of this information that we are talking about now. You can go to our website at tndisability.org/brain, and you can download that document, and it's all this evidence-based information on all of these things, including some free resources. So think about what changes will you make, what can you make, what's on your list right now, and if you want to make change in someone else, like a child, like a spouse, the best way that you can do it is to change yourself first. If you can get their agreement to start it with you, that's awesome. But you know your family best, or who you're trying to change for best. Sometimes the best way is to do it yourself. And they start to see you eating better. They see you exercising. They start to see you're happier, you're more fit, you've lost some weight. So make those changes in you first, or get their commitment to do it with you. Get a friend to do it with you. And you've also got to be honest about the best way to approach it. So some approaches are, you can make one small change at a time. This month you just decide you're going to do no diet soda, and the next month you're not going to do red meat, whatever it is. This can take a lot of time if you have a lot of changes to make. And I know most of us do. So if that's what's going to work for you, do it. But we know that most people fall off their resolutions, their New Year's resolutions, within, I think it's 11 days. So if you fall off that first one, you don't even get to the rest of them. But that's fine. If you need to do that, do that. Sometimes it can be too overwhelming for some people. Clean up one area at a time. So now it's just not one item. It's, I'm going to clean up my food, and I'm going to switch to veganism. But that's all I can handle right now. That's fine. Or maybe I can't even tackle veganism, but I can do 5 vegan days a week, or whatever it is for you. Maybe you start with 1 vegan meal a day, but have the goal, have yourself a plan of what you're going to get up to. Maybe you tackle everything at once. This is my style. This is what I like to do. Maybe you decide you're going to become a vegetarian. You're going to walk 1 mile every day. You're going to have a gratitude journal. You're going to do all of these things. You might want to choose someone that you can be accountable to. That will help you stay on track. Can't be somebody who's going to pull you off, though, and say, oh, you've been doing great. Let's go have a big dinner and a glass of wine. Yes, you can still do that every once in a while, but that can also be the end of what you were, you can go, that wasn't so bad. Let me do it again. So Just know yourself. So you can create a daily check-off for yourself. For me, I'm accountable to me. I made a commitment 2 years ago to really change things up, and so everything is written down. I'll show you a little bit next, something similar to what I do. But these are all the areas. You can create goals in all of these areas. The one thing we didn't talk about is monitoring your health. So if you have high blood pressure or blood sugar issues, I would highly recommend you monitor that daily. Write it down so that you have some accountability. Again, you can see trends over time. You can see what's happening. And then also know that it's time to maybe just go back and be checked by your doctor to see if insulin needs to be changed or blood pressure medications need to be changed. Again, don't do that on your own. So I use a daily checkoff. It kind of looks like this. I have it right here. It's always with me here, and because I'm always at this desk daily. So it's right there, and it takes me literally, I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes to check it off each day. And so it has things that I want, that are important for me, that I needed to change in my life. So it could be things that you're grateful for, writing down 2 a day, killing your amps, meditating for a certain amount of time. And what I did was I created a month by month, because I planned out where I wanted to be at the end of the year for that year. And I worked backwards, figuring out, well, then what did that mean I had to do each month? And, you know, if it didn't work, like I said, oh, I want to lose 100 pounds. Well, that's going to be really, really probably unsafe. So you need to back it off and kind of put what's going to, you know, work it out month by month and see if that's going to work by the end of the year. And then I don't meet every goal. I don't meet every goal every day, and I don't necessarily meet every goal every month, you know, meet the goal for the month. But because I'm writing this, it helps me to see where I'm off. So if I can say, oh, I'm sliding in the number of vegan meals that I wanted to have each month, or I've fallen off in my exercise. That's really, really easy to do if you're not keeping track of it. But because I have it in front of me, both daily and then monthly, I can see. And I started this because I was somebody who got really, really excited about January 1st. And by November, I'm like, I get to set new goals coming up. Well, I don't know why, but I'm just weird that way. I would get really excited about it. It's like, this is a brand new start. I can just do things differently. And what I decided to was like, well, why do I have to wait for January 1st? Why can't I do that every month? So for me, I get excited the first of every month to say, okay, how am I doing? Let's reset. Let's see where I am. So again, do what works for you. You can also have monthly goals on that. Read one book, do one new thing. So think about what your approach will be. And if you're here because you have somebody in your life that has a traumatic brain injury, then the service coordination program in Tennessee, so if you have to live in Tennessee, is a free service. It works with survivors and their families to help you to figure out what resources you need. Let me tell you this. So they're free. They're fantastic. Go find them. You can Google them, and you'll find the one. There are 8 of them in different regions across Tennessee. Right now, they are doing weekly virtual support groups. They have been incredibly successful. There's a weekly one for survivors, one for caregivers, and there's an art group. So, and people from all over are welcome to those. You don't have to be from Tennessee. So you can go to one of the service coordinators and email them, and they'll get you put on the list, and you'll get the announcements for it. Just a fantastic program. So here's our team. We are 4. We are mighty, and we are across the state of Tennessee, like I said. You can, if you have other questions, you can contact me at Wendy_E@tndisability.org. Like I said, you can find the resources at tndisability.org/brain. And you can also follow us on any of our social media. I thank you so much for being here with me right now, and I wish you all the best in all of the changes that you're going to make in your life.